Hi, everybody, and welcome. My name is Bobby Carlton. I'm the editor in chief and publisher of Lioness magazine for the female entrepreneur. And I'm also an entrepreneur myself. I'm the founder and CEO of Innovation Women. And today we have a very exciting presentation. We're going to be talking about negotiations. But beforehand, what we're going to do, we just have a few little housekeeping. Laura, next slide. Excellent. So sign up today for our January Lioness networking. So that is on Tuesday, January 13th from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern. That link is coming at you in the chat. And next slide. Thank you. We do have some other exciting webinars and presentations. These links are also in the chat for you. If you're interested in public speaking, next week we'll be talking about how to get more speaking opportunities. That's on December 16th. And in January, you can already sign up for things in 2026. Oh my God. So the portfolio mindset advantage. So how to leverage multiple passions for maximum income. And again, those links are in the chat. Meanwhile, this is a highly interactive thing. So if you have questions or comments at any time during this presentation, if you can drop the questions into the Q&A versus using the chat, it helps them stand out and it helps us manage things. All right, are we good on the slides? Oh, yes. Just a reminder as well that Lioness has a premium membership. If you're interested in hanging out with other women entrepreneurs, this is a great opportunity. Come and join us at Lioness. This is a whole online community for female entrepreneurs. Great opportunities, great tools, and great access. And so that link is also in the chat. All right, I think we're good. Yes. Oh, this is what we're doing today. So today we are talking with Alla Adam. She's an investor, 3 times a founder, a Harvard trained negotiator, a mentor, an author, and she helps solve problems before they happen. Oh, yeah. And she pilots airplanes and stuff in between all these fun things she's doing. She's a startup and VC mentor at Startout and Techstars. She's worked with a startup school as a startup school mentor at Y Combinator. She's got this amazing resume, and we are so incredibly fortunate to have her here joining us today to talk about everything related to negotiations. Now, this is where I say I've got a whole list of questions. I recently had to go and help my kid buy a car, but I know that you are interested in negotiations in terms of your business. So feel free to drop in those questions into the Q&A at any time during the presentation, and I will pop over there. So I think we're going to dispense with the slides. Thank you very much. And move in. Thank you so much for joining us today. So, Alla, you are in Florida today, and
Yes, I am in Florida, sunny Tampa Bay, Florida today.
how did you negotiate that deal?
Oh, actually, my husband needed to negotiate with me. It was a little vice
Aha.
versa.
Yep. And
I
I
was
I think
more for Chicago. He was more for Florida. So here we
okay.
are.
Well, I think that one of the things that points out is negotiation is a necessary skill in every part of our personal and professional lives. And really, like, just talk to us about it. Talk to us about negotiation. Take it away. Tell us everything.
Absolutely. Let's do it. So I like to think about negotiation not as conflict, not as persuasion, and definitely not as sales. I like to think about it as an operating system behind what you start, what you scale, and what you want to exit, right? Be it your business, your career, your reputation, your network, whatever it is, right? So there's also this interesting principle in negotiation that works in every single negotiation: strategic business crisis negotiation, relationship negotiation, right? And it goes like this: you can negotiate with everyone but yourself. That's the major principle I would say to remember and always keep in mind, right? Because when you start negotiating with yourself, then you kind of have already lost, right? So that's that's the big thing. But let's start with start, since we are talking about start scale exit today, right? So every single stage in negotiation, it has kind of its own psychology, right? So during start, we use identity psychology. During scale, we use systems psychology. And during exit, we use strategy psychology. And that's why you just cannot treat every stage as the same negotiation, right? Otherwise, you will lose leverage. And this is the last thing you want. So, every beginning, pitching a company, applying to TEDx, stepping into a new leadership role, right? Selling your startup contains three simultaneous negotiations. And this is the part of start. Number one is negotiation of identity. And here you ask yourself, who am I in this room? Number two is negotiation of scarcity. And here, well, you look at yourself. You can't look too flexible or too available or too grateful or give away your power, right? You need to be a scarce resource. And number three, the last one, is negotiation of intent, which means why you? Why now? Why them? Why about this? Whatever you're talking about. If you don't define these three, the other party will, and they will define it for you. And there's a very high chance that you will not like their version, right? So here's a tool. Since our conversation today is very practical and negotiation is a very practical science. So here's a tool that you can use to cover all three: negotiation of identity, of scarcity, and of intent. And it's called the definition sentence. And it basically goes like this: here's who I am, here's what I do, here's why it matters for you, right? Not for you, but for the other side. So instead of titles or bios, resumes, you can answer these questions to come up with your definition sentence. So question number one, what impact do you create? Question number two, what changes because of you? Number three, why does that impact matter? And why does it matter not just for you, but for everyone around you, for the other party you're negotiating? Number four, what gets better? What gets easier? What becomes possible, right? Because of this impact. Number five, why are they talking to you right now? Not your colleague, not your husband, not your wife, not anyone else, but you, specifically you. Number six, what timing, insight, or experience makes you relevant in this moment, and why? The answers to this pretty simple questions, I would say, but simple, not easy, will be your definition sentence. And this is the best start of every negotiation. I would say that the most common mistake when you start is to overwhelm yourself and overwhelm the other party. Basically, tell too much or ask for too much. And the definition sentence will help you avoid this mistake forever. I personally have used the definition sentence, and I have several of them because for different negotiations, they will be different. Like in crisis negotiations, when lives are at stake, quite literally at stake, your definition sentence, well, would be different from business negotiations, from buying a car, for example, or selling your business, or pitching your new startup at some demo day competition, right? So you kind of craft it, have a couple of them, make sure to tweak them because your experience changes with years. You're definitely not the same person you were when you were 25, and you will not be the same at 60. So that your definition sentences evolve together with you. They're alive, right? So at this stage, I have a couple questions for you, but if you have some questions for me, you feel free to ask. So I would say the question I was thinking about, like which part of your definition sentence, if you have it, or the potential one that you're planning to craft, kind of right now feels the hardest for you, the hardest to say out loud, the hardest to come up with. If you have any ideas, if you have answers, I guess feel free to share in the chat, right? And we can discuss them later on in our big Q&A, right? And also, where do you give away your scarcity? Like, where do you become way too available, way too yes man or yes woman? Why does it happen? What triggers you, right? So, but before we jump to scale, and scale is our block two of this conversation, let's talk a bit about fear and power because they play a big role in the scale section of negotiation, right? It's not so easy to recognize when you are negotiating from fear. I know it myself. And actually, 90% of negotiations, they are done from fear, believe it or not. Like even the most professional, high-level negotiations you can think of, they are done from fear. And rushing, apologizing, over-explaining, discounting, softening, these are all familiar examples that happen during the negotiation done from fear. But you might as well use power, right? So power, on the other hand, is clarity, it's rhythm, it's boundaries, and very clean decisions. And even if you started from fear, and I think this is extremely important to keep in mind, to kind of remember as a little affirmation. If you started from fear, you can flip the dynamic during the negotiation by returning mentally to your non negotiables. Like this is the little exercise you can always do with yourself. And your non negotiables are things that are absolutely not up for discussion, like not at all, right? Like your kids, for example. You don't need to name them necessarily, but you need to remind yourself that this is your decision and that there is a very clear why behind this decision, right? And in that, for every negotiation, you must have, I would say, roughly 3 non-negotiable. Roughly. You can have more, but don't have less than 3 because you need something to anchor you. And this is how you scale, right? So scale is where negotiation evolves from one-on-one into the ecosystem, right? When you scale your company, your influence, your career, for example, you stop negotiating one conversation at a time and you start negotiating entire environments. And this stage, the stage of scale, it actually has 3 very big traps. So trap number 1 is negotiating from validation. trap number 2 is negotiating from urgency. And trap number 3 is negotiating without non-negotiables, kind of jumping into the negotiation and just writing it on emotions. Well, that never really works, right? So this last one, negotiating without non-negotiables, is actually the most common and the most tricky. You tend to think that scale negotiations need to happen no matter what, right? Because you have already started, so now it's time to scale. But this is where you tend to overturn your own values just to kind of get that validation right here, right now, right? You tend to want this closure. But again, this is where you can easily fail. So don't do it. Sometimes, people would go for landing some crappy TEDx nowhere talk or get that investment at an astronomical equity percentage. And I've seen it so many times. Or hire that one person who has been ghosting you for a week or two, but you still want to jam this person in your team and hire them because you want the closure. Why? You push, you want to prove the point, right? But then it's likely the whole ordeal is going to fail, right? So, how about you ask yourself this question on every step of your scale? What are 3 very specific things I will not negotiate, even if the whole room, the whole world wants me to? Let me give you some examples, right? So, founder examples. If you are a founder, if you're building a startup, building a company, building something, right, from scratch, so you can have the non negotiable equity percentage, non negotiable decision rights, non-negotiable mission integrity, and non-negotiable core founding team. If you are a speaker or if you want to be a speaker, right, and you're approaching different speaking opportunities, well, you can have a non-negotiable message. Your positioning can also be non-negotiable. Your boundaries as a speaker, what you are going to do, what you won't do, right, also can be non-negotiable. And the unique way you say certain things, like your quirks, for example, like I say it's like I speak 12 languages and a lot of my words in English, they're also kind of mixed with different accents from the other languages. For example, I don't say can't, I say can't, or I don't say France, I say France. Is just something I use from the French language. And this is a little quirk and it's non-negotiable. I get it, but for me, it's a non-negotiable. So if you're a coach, an advisor, a consultant, if you are in some type of a professional services business, so your time in this case can be non-negotiable. Your pricing can be non-negotiable. Your professional identity can be non-negotiable, and your boundaries too. So basically, there's a lot of things that kind of overlap, right? Boundaries can be non-negotiable no matter who you are, right? Even like if you're a parent, boundaries can be non-negotiable with other parents, with your kids, etc. That's totally fine. But you need to know it. You need to define it, right? If it's your time, what time? Right? How long are you willing to be on that stage? If it's your fee, then why? What is the value behind your fee that is non-negotiable? Right? And if you're providing discounts, then how low are you willing to go? This is your kind of best alternative to the negotiated agreement. This is what is called BATNA in negotiation, right? You also need to know your zone of possible agreement. This is what is called ZOPA in negotiation, right? Kind of where are you ready to meet them if they really want you to compromise, right? So there's this one principle that is shared by great negotiators, pilots, investors, entrepreneurs. And it goes like this, and it's universal. It's shared all over the world. So it goes like this: clarity before movement. Just 3 words. As a pilot, and Bobby mentioned that I fly planes, and I've been flying planes since 2012, and then I added helicopters, and then I started experiment with other planes and all kinds of flying vehicles, let's put it this way. So I have this rule that is called decision altitude. Past that line in the air, the altitude, the specific altitude line in the air, I don't have the right to negotiate. I can only act. So this is what this rule means, right? And in scaling, the same rule applies. You can move only after clarity, not before, right? And that's how you become bulletproof. Because if you jump with emotions, if you kind of don't wait for clarity, if you don't clarify it with yourself first or your partners, if it's a group of you in negotiations, it's gonna hurt you a lot, right? Because clarity is something that anchors you. It's like, okay, now I understand. I see for myself, for example, as a pilot, I have my runway in sight. My airspeed is established. I am on my final approach. Everything's fine. I see all the obstacles. I understand what the weather conditions are. I don't see anyone else in the landing pattern, so I'm not going to collide with anyone. I don't see birds or anything else. So I am committed. I'm landing unless something crazy occurs, and then I will do a go around, for example. Kind of the same thing applies for negotiations. Let's say you're pitching your startup or pitching yourself as a speaker, right? So what is your decision altitude, right? Where are you gonna, have this clarity, kind of step on it, anchor yourself, and then move? Like, what things do you need to clarify before you will be ready to move? Have this in mind and have it prepared before you start any negotiation, because essentially every conversation you will have in this life will have some negotiation component in it. No matter if you're purchasing something small or something big, or if you're going to speak at some event, or if you are even communicating with some potential partner or client, whatever it is. Or for example, if you want to do some types of sports, some interesting new sports or interesting new hobbies, etc., you will meet new people and you will negotiate. And in negotiation, it's not necessarily about win-win or win-lose. It's it's about this. What you can give them so they can give you whatever you want. What is it? Right? It's always kind of barter relations. What is it that you can give them so they can give you what you want, and vice versa, right? So here's a couple questions I'd like you to think about before we start our active Q&A, right? So which one of the 3 traps that I mentioned, right? And I mentioned negotiating from validation, negotiating from urgency, and negotiating without non-negotiables. And all these traps tend to pop up during the scale stage of negotiation. So which one of these traps do you fall into most often, right? When do you try to get the validation fast? When do you try to speed up the things, kind of get in the closure? Or when do you just jump in without non-negotiables? And where do you negotiate from fear instead of power? Like, how does fear motivate you so much that you start negotiating without kind of waiting for the power position or putting yourself in the power position to negotiate? So give it a thought and let's discuss it during the Q&A, right? But now slowly we're ready to move to the exit, Because essentially the scale stage of negotiation tends to be the longest one, because this is when you can go forward or go backwards. You have no idea where you're going to go in scale. But after scale always comes exit. And exits, whether they're business exits, visibility exits, or stepping into a room where the stakes are 10 times higher, they are not about being ready. And this is important to understand. You will never be ready for the exit. For example, if you're raising money, raising funds for your startup, investors, like you can do a pitch today, investors can give you a call tomorrow and say, okay, here's the check. I'm ready to deposit it. And you're like, wait, what? What's going on? Right? So you will never be ready, but you need to be responsive and reciprocate what's coming from the other side. If it's good, obviously. If it's not, then you kind of counteract. So exits are about whether your decisions, your message, and your behavior hold up when the stakes rise, right? At the exit stage, everyone is evaluating you. Everyone, your colleagues, your counterpart, everyone is evaluating, right? Your potential clients, everyone's kind of watching you. And the truth is that most people actually have no idea how to go through it without giving huge discounts, making crazy concessions that will inevitably hurt in the future, right? Because you want that closure and you're like, okay, here's your 70% discount. And then you're getting out of the room and you're like, oh, crap, what did I just do? Why did it happen? But you cannot really reverse it in most cases, especially if the consensual agreement has been signed, right? So a lot of people tend to feel very uncomfortable during the exit stage, and they just want to get it done and completely neglect the strategic possibilities of exit. Because exit is the most flexible stage of negotiation. Just think of it. When you start, you don't have that much flexibility. You kind of need to start the things so you understand more of what they want and you kind of express more of what you want. During scale, you are trying to align all the different angles and make sure that you are on the same page. And then exit, right? But it's the most flexible stage and it has amazing possibilities. So here are the three things that everyone who is evaluating you, be it investors, be it your colleagues, be it curators of some conferences, events, or be it the potential acquirers of your business or your partners, here's what they're looking for. So number one is stability, right? And the question here is, can you hold the weight of the next? Because whatever comes next is going to be a lot. Your company is going to be on a different level of growth, right? There's going to be a lot of changes, potentially a lot of money, potentially new clients, new markets, new resolutions, something new. So can you hold it, right? Whatever big this next is, it means you don't get rattled when the stakes increase. You're not going to hide. You will not just spend all the money and, I don't know, go to the beautiful island, but you will keep working. You will keep being committed, right? You will keep your stakes in the game. So, number two is clarity, which means do you know exactly what you want and why? In a lot of cases, believe it or not, when the negotiation comes to the exit stage of it, it's like one of the parties is like, oh, maybe it's not what I actually want. Maybe this is this. Maybe this is that. Because the scale stage opens so many new opportunities. And eventually, what they wanted at the beginning just changed. And it's okay, but kind of, the commitment and the consistency, they also matter very much in negotiations, right? So, do you know exactly what you want and why? This is clarity. And at this stage, people don't test your talent at the exit stage, right? They test your decision making. How firm are you in your decisions? And how hard it is for you to actually make these decisions and stick to them? Or are you jumping around? Are you listening to some advisors, some random people? Or are you the person of your word? So, number three is predictability. It doesn't mean that you need to be boring, it means that you need to be consistent. Consistent execution, consistent message, consistent emotional presence, consistent physical commitments. Because people invest in what they can predict. And every action is an investment. Investment of money, investment of time, investment of attention, investment of energy. Every action is an investment, right? So if they can predict it, even a little bit, even kind of just 1 year from now or 2 years from now, that's enough. And this is what you need to show them. This is what you need to convey to have the exit that is good for them and is good for you, right? So I'm pretty sure that at least one of you or many of you have struggled with the exit recently. I am very much pretty sure because I have struggled with all kinds of different exits. And some of them are on hold now, and some of them will be, we'll have resolution probably this week. We shall see micro exits and meaty exits and maxi exits. So just kind of think about that. Why did you struggle? What did you lack? Did you lack predictability or clarity or stability? Kind of, why did you struggle, right? What happened? So, and now I feel like we're coming to the end of our long conversation today, and we'll be ready to jump into Q&A. But before we do that, I'd like to say that start, scale, and exit, they're different negotiations with different psychologies, but they all blow up the moment you begin negotiating with yourself, right? Remember what we discussed at the beginning. You're allowed to negotiate with absolutely everyone but yourself, right? And this is how it usually goes in your head. Like, should I tone myself down? Should I ask for less? Should I ask for more? Should I take this because it's better than nothing? Should I shrink to fit the room? This should have, could have, maybe, how, what if, these are the things that don't help you at all. And they will derail you eventually if you start listening to them. Because the answer is no, no, you should not tone yourself down. You should not ask for less. You should not take this because it's better than nothing. And you should never ever shrink yourself, no matter what, right? No matter what the other side is telling you. Like, for example, quite recently in September, I had my TEDx talk, and I've been working on that with global TED curators. And I got all kinds of feedback. And obviously, the first draft of my talk was completely different from the last draft, and it was not the best. But there were certain things I didn't want to change. And I was like, no, I'm not going to change that. Even if you want me to change that, I'm not going to change it because it's something authentic for me. And it's important for me to use or to share this message in the exact same way as I want to share it, no matter if it's shocking for the audience or the audience will definitely understand it. But their point was that it's going to be shocking for the audience. Sure, it might be, but it is authentic Allah. So why would I change it? I'm going to shrink myself to the level of the audience, but I will listen to the audience. I will be responsive. And it worked out. It worked out perfectly. I got standing ovations three times during my talk. I was like, yeah, perfect. It didn't happen during my first TED talk, but it happened during the second. Wonderful. So you make a decision at your decision altitude, right? Remember clarity before movement. And then you act and you stick to your decision, right? So clarity before movement, courage before approval, and just never, ever negotiate with yourself. So these are the messages I want to leave you with. And now I will be very much ready to jump into our Q&A and see what kinds of very practical negotiating questions you have.
All right. Thank you so much for so many like interesting ideas and food for thought. I have a question for you. And also, I just want to urge everyone, if you have a question about negotiations, if you can drop those into the Q&A, that would be so helpful in terms of organizing things. You mentioned that one of the traps is negotiation from validation. Is that about negotiating seeking validation? Or can you explain that a little bit better?
What? It's seeking validation and providing validation both. So this is actually where the ego steps in, right? So ego wants validation very much. At the same time, ego wants to provide validation to someone else and kind of act as a mentor. So this trap has two angles to it, right? You must kind of refrain from the wish, the desire to educate someone, to provide more information about your company or whatever you're building or about yourself, to kind of overwhelm them with all the credentials you have, etc. And you also must refrain from seeking validation from them, telling you that you are this amazing good person and you and only you, etc. Because in a lot of cases, it can be fake, right? And they might want to give you all this validation and then ask you for a discount, and you will be trapped. And this is exactly what you want to avoid.
Got it. All right. We've got some great questions coming in
Perfect.
from the audience. The first question is, what if you cannot afford to leave the offer? I think it's leave the negotiation
Mhm,
that you don't want on the table. Like the other party will not budge.
mhm.
They will not negotiate, it sounds like, to give you what you want. So,
Yeah.
is this a you can't afford to leave, but you can't afford to give them what they want, and they are not budging? Are there
Mhm.
options?
I would say, here's the thing. Let's decrypt this question. If you cannot afford to leave, this means that you did not really think through your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. And you did not think through your non-negotiable, right? Because absolutely any time you can live the negotiation and you need to be ready for it. This is one of the actions that you can take, right? You cannot jump from an airplane that doesn't have a parachute and ejecting system, but you can live the negotiation. You can literally walk away. It's going to cost you. You will probably need to, if it's a negotiation with a client, find out a client, go to the bank, take a loan, whatever, if you need money, but you can leave. At the same time, there are negotiations, let's say political negotiations. And I have a lot of experience with political crisis negotiations of sorts. And in that case, I mean, both parties usually don't budge. They jump into their own status quo and they kind of sit there. We want this, and that's it. Everyone else, every other solutions are horrible. We just want this. Okay. So there's this one question that helps to diffuse the whole status quo situation. And here it goes. Why is it important for you, right? Why is it important for you to stay in the status quo? Why is it important for you not to negotiate with me, but to kind of just stay silent? Why is it important for you not to give me this? Why is this specific sum important for you? Why are you insisting that this costs this amount of money, whatever this is, why is it important for you? And then they will explain. Usually they will tell you, unless, they are, I don't know, psychopath, usually they will tell you this is why. Because my boss told me this, because I have this and this and this criteria, because we have these rules, because whatever. And then you can work with it. You can say, okay, give me 24 hours. I will see what I can do from my side. And I invite you to come back into the negotiation, not the status quo, but the negotiation. I will see what I can do to help you get what you want. Okay? Okay. And then you go and you turn on your creativity muscle and you figure it out. If you cannot absolutely afford it, or you figure out the best alternatives that you can afford. That's
Maybe
kind of it.
redefining what is being negotiated over.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Usually you are negotiating the wrong thing. If the other party is actually jumping into the status quo and kind of just, pulling the straight face and saying, no, 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 no.
Excellent. All right, we have another question. Um, this person says, first off, kudos, excellent talk.
Thank
I
you.
hear you that we shouldn't negotiate from a place of fear, but
Hmm.
often we're in a place where we need something from someone and there is a tremendous risk of not getting what
Hmm.
we need. How can we turn fear into power?
Hmm. So you can start with fear. Don't get me wrong, fear is not bad. You might be afraid to lose something. As you said, there's a tremendous risk, right? Sure, tremendous risk. You're negotiating with your ex, tremendous risk to lose your kids. That's an extreme situation. But I have been in negotiations like this on different party sides, and they're tough. They're awful, but you still can negotiate. Again, go back. Let's say you start with fear. I don't want to lose this. Okay, that's your fear. What is your power in this negotiation? Who are you, right? You kind of go back to this, who am I, right? Why me? Why now? Why am I negotiating with them? Who am I in this room, right? How can I make myself scarce in this negotiation? And this is what gives you power. It gives it back. And what are my non-negotiables? Right? If the other party tells you, okay, can you cut off your leg? Is it your non-negotiable? Are you gonna cut off your leg? Is the risk worth cutting off your leg? You're thinking about, the logical and the absurd things as well. Are you going to harm yourself? Because in high stakes, high crisis negotiations, when there is a suicidal subject, for example, and I've been in negotiations like that, right? I had a C-level executive barricading themselves in their office and threatening us with the suicide. And we negotiated him out of that office. So it's kind of, how far are you going to let them place their demands on you? This is when you determine your boundary and it gives you your power back, right? So it's kind of, just think that every single time, again, unless it's the question of life and death, you can walk away. Absolutely, you can. Yes, you might need to become homeless, apply for food stamps, whatever, but you can walk away if, you know, if it comes to that. You can figure it out. But it's, of course, better to figure it out ahead of time. Again, have your best alternative, have your non negotiables, have your understanding of why they're actually negotiating with you. If they are here, if they are negotiating with you, even with high risks, they need something from you. What are you ready to give them? And to what extent and why, right? And okay, if, for example, if it's an absolutely awful negotiation about the custody over your kids, then what did your ex do? What horrible things did they do? If it goes too nasty, then you also need to play nasty. Then you figure out what happened on their side and you use it against them because it's the leverage. Nobody wants to do it, but again, it's the power, right? And you can also use the question, why is it important for you? If the other party pushes you over the edge, kind of rides on your emotion, right? Tries to just depict you as the most horrible person on the planet. Then you just kind of back off, turn on your helicopter view, look down at the situation and say, hey, so you're doing all this and you label what they just did. You call me such and such. You do this and this. You don't provide this and this. You state this and this. Why is it important for you? Really? Why? And then you listen, right? The more you listen in a negotiation, the more leverage you're going to get.
So I know these statements have been made, everything is negotiable, but in
Sure.
some cases it doesn't seem to be. How do we ascertain if the other side is open to negotiations? Are there
Mhm,
ways to open up a
mhm,
transaction to negotiations?
mhm. I would say this is referring us to start, right? You ask the other side. You always start with questions. Like you shake your hands, sure. Here's Alla, I'm Alla, you're this and this. Okay, very nice. Why are you here? Right? Why are you here? What are you here to gain? Why are you here? And you listen to them. And they can tell you whatever. They can tell you, oh, my boss sent me here, or oh, I actually don't want to be here, but it just happened so that it's me negotiating from the side of our company, etc. And then you say, oh, okay, so why is that so? Why is it just you? Why not you and someone else from your company? It's such a big matter. Why is it just you? And you keep gaining this information. And then you say, okay, what kinds of questions do you have for me? So you don't start with the initial negotiation. Let's say you're negotiating a big contract or tender agreement, whatever. You never ever start with the plot of the negotiation. You start with them, the other party, right? You kind of you can ask them why have they chosen the tie? Maybe their tie is yellow color. Why is it yellow? Like, do you have different colors for different days? It's something that they will never expect from you. And likely something genuine is going to come out of them. And of course, every person, every single one of us loves to talk about ourselves much more than about anyone or anything else. Perfect. Give them this opportunity. So your goal here is to learn more about them, why they're here, why it's them, what are they here for? Right? What do they need from you? What kinds of questions do they have for you? You give them this outlet, and then they kind of start thinking, oh, wow, I have this leverage. Okay, perfect. I'm going to finish it very fast. Nice, but not so fast. Then you will start your own scale, right? And then you will kind of lead them to the decision that is beneficial, hopefully, for both of you. It's not necessarily going to be a super win-win. And I disagree. Not everything is not negotiable. No, there shall be a lot of things that are non-negotiable, right? I'm not going to harm myself if whatever, even if you let the 20 hostages out, I'm not going to harm myself. That's crap. No, what? I'm not suicidal. So why? It's especially if you are in a super high stakes negotiation, right? All kinds of absurd demands will come out from the other side, all kinds of them. I don't like this coffee, give me the other coffee. This coffee is supposed to be from this country, this store, this person, whatever. Sometimes it's as ridiculous as that, just because they're trying to buy more time. Okay, sure. And you say, no, it's not going to happen. Why? Then you need to kind of describe why, right? And then you can always ask again, why is it important for you? Why do you want coffee? I just read your profile on LinkedIn and you're talking here about the fact that you don't like coffee, you're drinking tea. So, of course, you make your own research. Of course, you come prepared and you let them kind of start the negotiation. Of course, you start it, but you let them, uh, think that they start the negotiation. And yeah, this is how you eventually get what you want.
Speaking of starting, we have another
Sure.
question.
Ah.
Are negotiations different if I do the approaching of the client or if the client first approaches me?
Not necessarily, not necessarily, because the subject of the negotiation is essentially the same. It's you as a service provider, let's say, and a client on the other side. They want most probably the same thing from you as the other clients, and you most probably can only provide the same thing that they want, right? So the subject is the same. Whoever approaches, it really doesn't matter that much. But when they approach you, they already have something on their mind, right? So they might ask you, they might start with like the fees. What are your fees, for example? And your goal is to gently redirect them. You know your fees. You're not going to negotiate your fees, but you want to figure out more what's going on their side. What are their needs? Why won't you tell me about why you are here? Why did you send me this message? Why did you call me, right? Why are we in this conversation? What is most important for you right now? What's the problem on your mind, right? What's like the $1 million problem that you have right now that I can help you solve in the short term, for example? What's pressing? So, and then after you learn it, then you can decide, do you want to work with that client or not? Because, hopefully you don't want to work with everyone. Not everyone is worth your time and your attention, and it's totally fine. And if you determine that it's a no-go, then you can write them a very nice email and say, hey, how about you talk to such and such? It's actually, not the question for me, but maybe you go ahead and talk to a therapist, whatever.
That
Stuff
actually
like
leads
that.
us that
Mm.
actually leads us right to the one of the next questions from our audience. Um,
Uh-huh.
they're asking about red flags that mean you
Mm.
should just walk away versus
Hmm.
wasting your time.
Hmm. I would say so there are common red flags, and there are red flags that are very particular to different negotiations, right? So the common ones would be that they are stalling the negotiation, stalling by telling you, either ghosting you, not telling you anything, or by telling you some absolutely absurd things, right? Like, I don't know, I'm going to buy a monkey from whatever country and I need to stay in the quarantine for 20 days. Absurd idiocracy, right? So when you hear things like that that are absolutely not typical for the other party, but they keep kind of talking to you just in this very weird way, then you say, okay, guys, I made a decision. We're stopping the negotiation. I appreciate your time. When you're done with whatever's going on your side and you're ready to go all skin in the game with this negotiation, I'm ready to come back. Let me know, right? When they're ghosting you, if they're ghosting you for over, let's say, 72 hours, that's already enough. Then you're out and you need to state, don't ghost them back, state officially, respectfully, adequately that you're out of the negotiation and why you're out of the negotiation, right? Can you give them the understanding that this is your boundary and they must respect it no matter what's going on their side? And the other red flag would be when one person starts the negotiation with you. Let's say Mary starts the negotiation, and then, some Brad kind of jumps in, and then Mary is out, and Brad is in, and after Brad, it's Nick, and after Nick, it's Chad. And it's just too many people. This means that they're trying to train their low-level professionals on negotiating with their, vendor providers, whatever. So don't go for that, right? Just say, hey, I started with Mary. I want to proceed with Mary. Where's Mary? Right? It's already been too many changes. So, in other words, when they make too many changes, changes of the people, changes of the venue, changes of the subject, changes of all kinds of things, just nope, let's stop it. Come back to me. You need to give them the opportunity to come back to you, but you also need to tell them what you are allowing them to come back to you with, right? Because you don't want them to come back to you in the same weird, unorganized capacity that they were trying to negotiate with you with. Kind of like that. So these are the common red flags, very particular red flags. I would say, you know, look for anything that feels like a lie. And you can always ask a question, is it a lie? Right? Are you lying to me right now? Why is it important for you to lie to me? No, I'm not lying to you. Oh, can you prove that you're not lying to me right now? Right? If a person tells you, oh, my boss is going to arrive in 2 days and then we will talk about it. Okay, are you lying to me right now? Right? And kind of get all the information from the other side as much as you can. This will give you food for thought, food to determine if you need to stay or exit.
All right, great red flags. We only have a couple minutes left, but
Mhm.
real quickly, I mean, obviously AI is impacting
Yeah,
everything. How is
yeah.
AI impacting negotiations right now?
Mm. So AI is being implemented as the negotiating agent by big companies like Walmart, for example. Like if you are a Walmart's provider of whatever goods and services, you need to negotiate with AI right now. And it's not so easy because AI just follows patterns. AI has zero emotions, and AI knows only the things about you that it was provided with, right? That it has in its database. So you cannot tell AI that, you became better at this service. If it does not know it, it's not going to consider it at all. At the same time, AI is helping negotiators. So I've seen different minor AI implementations in crisis negotiations, for example, right? And this is like high stakes hostages and all, and robberies and whatever else, armed conflicts. And there is this role during crisis negotiations. It's called a scribe. A scribe is basically someone, usually it's a person, that just puts everything on the whiteboard and makes sure all the timings, everything is there from all the sides. AI does it so much better than the human being because AI has zero bias. It just puts everything as it is. As human beings, we can add our own colors, if you will, to whatever we were scribing. So that's kind of one of the very interesting use cases. There's also a lot of AI use cases in refugee and climate crisis negotiations. And the United Nations is also using AI, for example, in all kinds of like more minor negotiations, but still. So I'd say that we will see many more AI use cases in negotiations. I personally built my AI negotiation assistant for business negotiations and crisis negotiations, and I just use it as a research assistant and I trained it to think like me. So that's so helpful.
Excellent. All right. Thank you so much for the great thoughts about negotiation. Really some really interesting thought processes around negotiation. And if people do want to find you for additional negotiations work, where should they be following you?
Oh, they can find me on my website. It's very simple. It's allaadam.com. Very easy. They can find me on LinkedIn. I'm same Alla Adam, and my cool picture with a dog is there as well. And yeah, I mean, sure. Feel free to contact me. Absolutely.
Absolutely. All right. And folks, just remember we do have this recorded, so you will be seeing information about this presentation on Lioness Magazine. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day. Take care. Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Thank you, everyone.